This is the Future Talk. Bridges, not barriers. UN80 and the fight for the future of multilateral cooperation. Please welcome to the stage Katharina Stasch from the Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to our session, Bridges, Not Barriers, UN80 and the Fight for the Future of the Multilateral System. We heard it today in the opening session. The UN is facing many challenges: growing power competition, shrinking resources, and structural inefficiency. To mark a moment of reform, the Secretary General has launched the UN80 process, and many like-minded member states have gathered around the alliance to support the UN development system. And 22 of these member states will be presenting today a document to you, Deputy Secretary General. A very warm welcome to you. Amina Mohammed is glad to have you here. A document marking 10 steps towards a successful UN reform. We will be hearing also from a young representative her vision of the future of the UN, and there will be a moment of discussion of member states of the alliance together with the Minister of South Africa to discuss priorities of the reform. But first and foremost, we will have the German Federal Minister of Economic Cooperation and Development, Reem Alabali Radovan, giving her opening remarks. Please welcome with me our Minister.
Dear Amina Mohammed, again, it's so great to have you here, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. At this very moment, there are 65 active conflicts worldwide. 13 of them are classified as wars. Almost 250,000 people were killed in these conflicts last year. These are the highest figures since World War II. Last year, almost 120 million people were forcibly displaced. And even though the global community has made progress on fighting hunger, about 670 million people, especially children, are facing starvation. All of this is happening while the gap between the rich and the poor keeps growing year by year. Just recently, we heard it, the world acquired its first trillionaire. Inequality is becoming more extreme. It is obvious that these challenges can only be addressed on an international level, and there is nothing like the United Nations. The United Nations remains the only forum where 193 countries are represented with one voice, where they all come together peacefully to seek solutions. Sometimes this works well, sometimes less well. But the UN is and remains, and we heard it from the Federal President of Germany today in the morning, it is essential for the world. Yet, the UN is facing a dilemma. While it seeks to address those multitudes of highly complex global crises, the United Nations itself is in crisis, a financial crisis and a crisis of trust. This is why UN Secretary General Guterres launched the UN80 Reform Initiative, and Germany strongly supports this effort. We support you, Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed, in shaping the tools needed to tackle the world's crises more effectively. And we will remain a steadfast partner of multilateralism and rules-based international order. At the same time, Germany is just one player among the many that supports the UN to advance our interests within the UN and globally, we need partners and alliances, partners whom we can advance common goals. Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney, and it was cited a lot, emphasized this in his keynote speech at the World Economic Forum in Davos. The old world order is breaking apart and new alliances must be forged. The supporters of the UN development system is one such alliance. Last year at the Munich Security Conference, Germany and its partners launched the Alliance of Supporters of the UN Development System. Right now, we are more than 20 countries from all over the world, from all regions. What makes us unique? This alliance brings together countries from the global south and countries from the global north on equal footing. It aims to act as a bridge builder from Somalia to Switzerland, from Colombia to Canada. And I would like to take this opportunity to welcome our newest member who joined us just a few days ago, the Netherlands. Thank you for supporting us. And with you on board, we can only become stronger, and I call upon other countries to join our alliance. What unites us? We want to protect and strengthen development within and through the United Nations. The ultimate goal of all of our efforts is to improve impact for people on the ground, to make a tangible difference in their lives by reducing poverty and inequality, and by fostering peace and security for everyone. Our motto is reform, support, deliver. And we have developed an initial joint proposal for the UN80 Initiative, which we are honored to present to you today, Deputy Secretary General. Ladies and gentlemen, before we look at our proposal in more detail, I would like to invite all Alliance members to gather for a family photo after the remarks of Amina Mohammed and to jointly present the document with our 10 suggestions for a successful UN80 reform. I look forward to working together to make the United Nations stronger. Only with a strong United Nations can there be a strong global order, a global order that is the foundation of our shared future. So let's start this now. Thank you all for being here, for having a full house on that very important matter. That's a good signal. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. And we will now hear a keynote speech by our DSG. And DSG has led the process that resulted in global agreement of the 2030 Agenda and the birth of the Sustainable Development Goals. It's really a pleasure to have you here. The floor is yours. Please welcome with me the DSG.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you, Minister Alabali, Radovan, dear Reem, friends, ladies and gentlemen. I can see many, many friends in the audience. Thank you to the colleagues at BMZ, UNDP, the City of Hamburg, and the Michael Otto Foundation for helping us convene this discussion today, but also to the Alliance, and of course, the newest kid on the block, the Netherlands. It's really good to welcome you to this. You've stood by the UN development work, and especially in recent times when funding is lowering and pressure is rising for what we need to do. And I'd like to start by picking up on what the Minister had just said a few moments ago, the will and the need to cooperate. And in this case, for peace and development, you heard the figures on the conflicts. As I walked in the room, I met with our colleagues from Chad. This is a nation that is one of the most generous in the world with yet very little. And so when we talk about the funding that is needed to support Chad, it is for its generosity, it should get a return in dividends to support its poorer communities, not just for the humanitarian funding that is only about 30% funded, but also for development, for investing in the people of Chad, the women of Chad, on health, on education, on jobs. And so just leave it with you that when we do have conflicts, their neighbors take the first shocks. And in Africa, these are very poor neighbors, and they're struggling with their own development, and we need to make sure we're there to support it. But let me also speak about the vehicle to support the work that we do on the Sustainable Development Agenda. The United Nations, and it has been many things to many generations. And our task is not to preserve the UN as it was yesterday, but to try to adapt and strengthen and ensure that it is ready for the work that is upon it. UN80 calls us to that task. But the work did not start today. It didn't start a year ago, 2 years ago. It started when the Secretary General and I took on our mandate in 2017. We have pursued major reforms, repositioning the development system, strengthening peace and security, modernizing the management, and building a UN 2.0 that is fit for the digital age. All of it driven by one objective, to help member states deliver on the 2030 agenda. And through the Pact for the Future, member states have reaffirmed their expectation that the United Nations will continue to evolve, becoming more effective, more integrated, and more fit for purpose in a world that is facing deep uncertainty, geopolitical crisis after geopolitical crisis, climate shocks, and emerging technologies with untold power and ownership throwing into the mix. But the world of today is certainly a very different one from even a decade ago when we joined. Shock after shock, we thought we had 10 years to implement the Sustainable Development Agenda. And we were not in office for more than a year when COVID struck. And we thought that was going to last for a year. But we know today, even the recovery from COVID has taken many countries more than the 2-3 years that we had. The unimaginable war in Ukraine and Europe, now the crisis in the Middle East, coupled with shrinking resources, this really has changed our operating environment. We're looking over the edge of a widening gap between what member states expect of the UN and what the system in its current form can deliver. UN80 is not a reform for its own sake. It is about consolidating the sustainable development paradigm shift and ensuring that we do have the ability to deliver on the promises we made and that we are becoming a system the world still needs us to be to accompany them in that journey. The context in which we are operating has changed dramatically. It is undermining hard-won progress and threatening the investments that have been made possible, especially to women's rights. Net ODA fell by over 23% in 2025. That's about $38 billion US. And that number is projected to further decline in 2026. So let's be clear, as the Secretary General has been, UN80 is not a cure for the financial crisis. It is a commitment to protect those gains, to protect the space that we have made and create more for maximizing the impact. Beyond the mechanics of a reform, the reports and timelines, there lies one central question. How do we better use and leverage the impact of the resources that are available to us? And I will underscore leveraging, because domestic resources are there to be leveraged if we can convene the investments that come into a country to help with their development agenda. It opens the door to 4 considerations. First, on how we can deliver. Can we do this far better, using the tools in front of us, technology and data amongst them? Doing more with less only works if we're willing to do things efficiently, coherently, and as one joint effort. Leveraging each and everyone's comparative advantage, really getting serious about the division of labor, not the competition. Second, the structure. What do we need to get the job done? And for our work to be felt in people's lives? Not on the organization chart of the UN, but really in someone's life, in the environment in which they live. And so we need these processes that feed policy solutions to be upheld in countries with the right set of skills, expertise, and experience. That includes the UN. And third, coherence. Can our 3 pillars, peace, security, human rights, and development, and let me just add the important governance issues that we are all contending with, finally as one on the ground, so that when UN turns up a country, it turns up as one and not as 3 or 4 or 5. And we've seen this. It's not all the UN's intention has always been to try to work as one, but the way in which we are structured and funded does not help. We are a member state organization. And fourth, what we leave behind. How do we hand the next generation of this organization something stronger than we inherited? These are not questions that anyone can answer alone. No one government, no one institution or constituency can take on problems or opportunities that cross every border and invariably feed off each other. This is what the development system is for. We are in almost every country. and that's over 150 countries, people still trust and believe in the blue flag. We can still bring strange bedfellows together and reach people that have no one else to have that voice. Just as importantly, the UN development system safeguards the long-term normative and preventive work, from upholding human rights to anticipating the crises. The short-term politics tends to neglect. In times as uncertain as these are, a coordinated and trusted multilateral system, it's not a luxury, but it is a foundation for stability and shared prosperity. And I can tell you in the last 3-4 years, people are trying different models. They are not working. You will do a 360-degree and come back to the global town hall of our global village. I'd like to thank the Alliance for the initiative in support of the development system at the country level, but also at the regional and at the global level. The new country configurations, we believe, will create a much more agile UN development system with country presence aligned to national priorities and an empowered resident coordinator. What it means is that you have an impartial leader. I'm a CEO of a company, if you will, but you need a board, and that's a UN country team. And that UN country team needs to have muscle. It cannot just be there for a couple of projects. It's got to be there for the long term. And that means capacities. Capacities mean money that is much more than ad hoc. You need core funding to allow this to happen for our agencies, especially our largest footprint on the ground, the UNDP. The regional reset brings expertise, capacity closer to countries, reduces duplication, but it also handles regional issues that no one country can handle. The future direction of the organization and of the multilateral system more broadly are not ours to take alone. As the Secretary General has said, they belong to member states, but they are informed and guided by people's aspirations and the partners that we are all here to work with. And I'd like to hear those voices today, including those of the youth delegates. I look forward to the 10-point agenda that you have for us. Some doors only you can open. Reform can only take us so far. It does need a coalition of support for the final stretch, that's implementation. I can tell you for the last 9 years, the reforms that we laid out are still a work in progress, many unfinished business. It's a mindset change that is also needed to bring people to the table. And I think this is where the Alliance matters. You're exactly the constituency this moment needs, not defenders of the status quo, champions of a UN that earns its mandate every day, in every life, everywhere. The Alliance, of course, answers to this fractured moment that we find ourselves in. The future of multilateral development cooperation will be built by a coalition willing to reform the system. I would say transform the system, because we are really going into a new era. After 80 years, in most cases, shelf life has expired, right? So we need to reinvent ourselves, not be afraid of what we lose, but the shoulders that we're standing on to take this work forward. So give us your support, but also give us the best ideas, challenge us, put fire under our feet, hold us to the very highest of standards that people expect of us. That's what this partnership calls for, and this is one that I'm committed to. Thank you.
You may stay on this stage.
Oh, I get to stay?
Now, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the big moment has arrived. The document 10 Steps Towards a Successful UN80 Reform can be handed over to you, ESG, and I would very kindly ask the members of the Alliance to come to the stage. Reem, Alabali, Radovan, Surt Surtsma, the Minister of Foreign Trade and Development Cooperation of the Netherlands, Baroness Chapman, the Minister of State for International Development in Africa of the United Kingdom, Lee Kinjajui, the Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry of Kenya, Maropene Ramokgopa, the Minister of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation of South Africa, Renate Heheim, the Norwegian State Secretary, Zuhur Alawi, the Ambassador of Morocco, and Antonio José Lehmann Guterres, the Ambassador of Costa Rica, as well as the representatives. Please join me on the stage, all members of the Alliance, and we will have representatives from Australia, Bangladesh, Canada, Colombia, Costa Rica, the Czech Republic, France, Germany, Ireland, Jordan, Kenya, Morocco, the Netherlands, New Zealand, Norway, Peru, Poland, Somalia, Spain, Sweden, Switzerland, Ukraine, and the United Kingdom. Please come.
That's good. No, it's fine.
Thank you very much. A round of applause. Thank you very much, Minister. Thank you very much, DSG. I would now like to welcome the youth delegate to the stage to give her vision of the future UN to us. A very warm welcome.
Dear Ministers, Excellencies, I am honored to offer a few remarks today. I speak in place of Ronnie, a young activist from South Sudan who unfortunately cannot be with us due to visa issues. I grew up in Germany in safety. I went to school. I could make my own voice heard. A year ago, I had the honor of representing Germany at the United Nations, speaking on behalf of millions of young people and advocating for sexual and reproductive health rights. I did not only do it out of solidarity, but also out of a sense of guilt. The guilt of living my life to the fullest while millions of others cannot because of global injustice, such as poverty, armed conflicts, food insecurity, the effects of climate change, and harmful social norms. These challenges cannot be solved in isolation. We need everyone at the table to realize the vision of a fair, healthy, and livable future for all. Young people are here the key to creating this vision. We already have so many ideas and agreements to shape a more just and sustainable world. What we need now are structures that help us implement them. And this is where you, as leaders and representatives, come in. I ask you to create new spaces and dialogues. We need a UN system that is not an end in itself, but an enabler of meaningful change, one that fosters cooperation at eye level and moves away from symbolism towards tangible improvements. A UN that makes room to test new forms of cooperation and enables innovation to address the obstacles we face today and in the future. Today, I serve as the youngest ever elected city councillor in my hometown. Taking responsibility and initiative matters. Yes, Kassel is not New York. But in the end, we face challenges similar to those at global level. Bringing together different interests, personalities, and solutions can be tough. It is not easy to include everyone and create a city that everyone can identify with. But I believe that we must gather our forces and strive to make a change on the local and the global level. My vision is of a UN that shifts from heavy bureaucracy to a practical implementation with funding that is accessible, a budget that pay for our solution and turn agreements into reality. I believe in a UN that promotes dialogue, trust, and diplomacy instead of escalation, withdrawal, and isolation. A UN that protects and strengthens the right of every person on the planet and leave no one behind. Your Excellencies, I am here today to encourage you, to help us shape this vision together. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this encouragement. And I would now like to welcome our panelists to the stage. Please join me on the stage, ministers. Yes, a round of applause. And since we are running a little bit behind schedule, if I may, I will skip the introductory part and plunge immediately into the subject matter. And probably we will have time for one question each just to prepare. So we will start with a colleague from the Netherlands, Excellency, Mr. Soetsma. We heard it. You only recently joined the alliance and you are the newest member of the alliance. So what were your reasons to join the alliance?
Thank you very much for that question. And I also want to hark back to the title of this meeting, which has the word fight in it. Now, the Netherlands is not looking for a fight. International law, human rights are part of our DNA. But if the fight is right, then I think we should not shy away from the fight. And I think if you look at the world as it is today, we're approaching a situation where might makes right. And this is very dangerous. It's a very dangerous situation. And if you look at the UN, and I think the Deputy Secretary General made it very clear, is still the global village, a village where everyone has a voice and a voice that counts. And of course, we have to protect it. We don't have to protect the status quo. I think this is a dangerous misconception that we should protect it as it is. But we should protect what it used to stand for and in principle, I think, still stands for. The one organization that delivers where it matters most. Where people, and I think someone just mentioned it, where people still salute the blue flag because it means something to them. It means hope. It means perspective. It means a way out of a situation that is, on a very personal level, very difficult. And we have to recognize, I think, that we're not doing well. This is, I think, my second point. We're not doing well. The SDGs are not on track. And simply put, beside a miracle, beyond a miracle, we're not going to make the SDGs. So when others are cutting back, the Netherlands has decided to step up, to make sure that it's not just word, but also actions. Because I think, yes, reforms, and I think these reforms are crucial because the UN needs to be more effective, it needs to be more efficient, and we need to lean a little bit into the UN perhaps at times to make sure that this happens. But I'm confident that this will work. But reforms without finance is just Turkey's getting ready for Christmas. We also need to ensure that the UN has the means to perform. Plus, that would be my final point, finance alone is not enough in these days. We also have to provide the political pressure, the alliance, the new alliances, the political backing to make sure that the UN has the space to operate politically, that it has a face that is accepted. Because we also see powers that want to push the UN to the sidelines, that do not allow the UN to see the light of day. And I think this is one of the most dangerous moments in our history, a pivotal moment, and that's today. That's why the Netherlands has decided to join, but also why we're stepping up. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Turning to you, Minister Ramokgopa, you are from a country which has long been engaging a lot for a very strong multilateral system. So what is your view on the current reforms?
Thank you very much. From my country, of course, we still believe that the reforms are quite important and the reform process will be the center of actually seeing a difference. And I've just had the UN Deputy Secretary General saying that maybe we need to look at transformation. We must reform, however, transformation becomes important. Our firm view, of course, is that reforms are not just an internal administrative exercise, because sometimes we tend to actually think that it's just that particular exercise. However, the reforms will only be be celebrated, of course, when we are able to see the delivery of the 3 interconnected pillars of the UN, which is peace and stability, sustainable development, and human rights, of course. But that can only be celebrated when the grassroots are actually feeling it and seeing a difference. Because if we're just going to place them as a structural issue that we deal with administratively, as I've already said, we will not be able to reach all those things that we have set out for ourselves. Of course, we still reiterate what we have always said as a common African position of a Zuluini consensus on the reforms. They are quite important, and we've seen what happens if we don't actually have a reform that would be able to allow UN to be commensurate with the current issues that we are facing. Yes, it has been there for quite a very long time. We still have the 1945 aspect that we still have to look at. However, times have changed. There are new issues that are arising. So as a result, whatever systems that are there to be able to deal with what is there, what we are actually facing, geopolitics and all the other issues such as the debt issues that we are facing, like in my continent as well. If we don't make sure that we've got the systems and the architecture that speak to those, we will forever be speaking, but we won't see a difference. And lastly, as the UN Secretary General, as of Deputy Secretary General, maybe you'll be a Secretary General soon, or maybe a prophet. I have already said member states. Member states are actually quite important because the UN systems can be able to be there to speak, to put systems in place. But if member states don't take what the UN has actually agreed upon or whatever we have agreed upon seriously to implement in their national development plans, we won't be able to actually be able to see the changes that are needed for us to know if the reforms are working or not.
Thank you very much for this powerful statement. Minister Kinjajui from Kenya, turning to you. Kenya is the latest country from the African continent to join the alliance. Tell us, what is important for you when it comes to UN80 and the reforms?
Thank you. I want to confirm that Kenya has been able to participate in the UN80, and we believe that the foundations upon which the UN was set up in 1945 have changed dramatically. And with a changing environment and changing circumstances, there's a need to adapt to the new realities. And I think that is really our key position. I think the other issue we would also want to mention is that Kenya also hosts part of the UN in Nairobi, in Gigiri, and therefore we believe that a better UN will also serve the continent and everywhere. And just for the record, the issue of the UN flag has been said, but I want to say that in regions of conflicts where people cannot talk to each other, that blue flag with a white in it means everything. It's a symbol of hope and a symbol that something is going to happen and that mankind cannot watch as things go bad. So I think we must agree, even though we may not be in those circumstances as individual nations, we cannot guarantee tomorrow. But we must prepare that tomorrow by having a UN that can respond to the challenges that may come irrespective. I also want to take this opportunity to say that we have talked a lot about the funding of the UN. And I guess this is probably one of the periods where there has been accelerated finance in defense and military spending across the world. So at the time when there's higher military and defense spending, there is less and less available for peace. So this is particularly of concern, especially to developing nations, because if there is war, there'll be reconstruction. So we are in a cycle of destruction, reconstruction, and really never giving people the right to live in the peace that they really deserve. So Kenya supports the reforms. And we believe that even the expansions currently going on in Kenya, the government has done everything necessary to ensure that we both have the capacity and the space necessary to facilitate those reforms. Lastly, also, is to confirm that the UN has been particularly useful to developing nations in very unusual circumstances. And therefore, for the continent, we would want to see a UN that recognizes and appreciates the circumstances with which developing nations operate, noting that at the time of formation, many of them were not independent nations by then, and therefore they would want to have a bigger role in how decisions are made and how to define their future. I submit.
Thank you very much. The UN, the blue flag as a symbol of hope, and this is definitely something worth fighting for. Thank you very much, our panelists. And I would now like to welcome Baroness Chapman for her closing remarks. And when we met in the floor, you said, I want to be bold. Please, be bold.
Thank you. That was a really great panel. I really appreciate being able to listen to that. And thank you, Madam Deputy Secretary General. And thank you for all the work that you're doing to really push this through. We can see it, we feel it. We are alongside you as your allies. And thank you to Germany for bringing us together in this amazing city. We know that multilateralism is under strain. We've talked about that today, and that we know as well that it really matters to us, which is why we are here. For the UK's part, we are proud to be part of the alliance of supporters of the UN development system. But as we've heard, we can't just support that system. We need to reform it, working together to ensure that the UN delivers for those who need it the very, very most. The UN80 Initiative and UN development system reforms are intrinsically linked. We can only build a system that's fit for today's challenges by doing both and doing them well. Member states set the framework in the 2018 reforms of the UN development system, and these have achieved a lot, but important elements are still to be done. So we support, more than that, we expect the UN leadership, and I know that you will, that use the UN80 to drive the reforms forward and overcome any of those very many obstacles that we know are going to get in the way. Now is not the time to take our foot off the gas or to accept incremental change. We should be really clear about what this means in practice. And we've heard some really important insights about that on the panel today. First, the UN must lead to UN country teams that are leaner, more context-specific, and more impactful. And we hear this from partner countries all the time. Today, an average of 22 UN entities operate in each programme country. That is far too many. And we need to see leaner country teams supported by a strengthened regional offer, including a more robust expertise on demand model. We need more detail on the current proposals so that we can ensure these reforms actually deliver greater efficiency and the impact that we want to see on the ground. Next, UN80 must make the UN cooperation framework the central document for all work at country level. All UN entities should align their programmes behind it, not the other way around. Right now, that does happen, and we see some brilliant examples of where that happens, but we all know in our heart of hearts that it's just not quite consistent enough. Too often, cooperation framework processes are being adjusted to fit agency timelines rather than setting the direction. We hear consistently from resident coordinators that getting this right is essential if we're going to succeed in our ambition of reducing fragmentation, strengthening coherence, and ensuring the UN80 delivers against countries' highest priorities. UN80 can fix this. Third, we must continue to drive efficiency and coherence across the whole system. This means, I think, progressing some of the long talked about but delayed reforms like common back offices alongside stronger accountability for collective delivery. These are not new ideas. They are urgent, though, I think now, and we've got to work together through this opportunity that we have in UN80 to make sure that they happen. And that's why today matters. It's why cross-regional membership of this alliance is absolutely vital. Our commitment to this agenda is absolutely clear from this discussion today. And this is very much a collective endeavour. So together we can build momentum, bring political backing from across the membership, and translate this shared ambition into concrete reforms. We've got to go further. We've got to go faster. We're running out of time to deliver the change that we absolutely need to have happen. And we've got to keep our focus where it belongs, which is delivering real, tangible results for people on the ground, wherever they are. The UK stands ready to support the blue flag that we've all been talking about today, because it really does matter. But we need to work together as this alliance and the UN membership more widely to make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Baroness Chapman. Thank you all the speakers of today's session. And in case you are curious, what is this about the 10 steps towards a successful UN80 reform? We put it online. You can find it in the app. And with this, I wish you a very great lunch and another applause for all speakers and participants today.